Chasing the Rainbows with your host, Bernice Quisenberry.
This week's episode is Healthy Boundaries, and it's with Bree and B. Welcome, Bree.
Hello.
Yes.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, too, and thanks for being here.
Of course.
Yeah, this segment is all about, after, we go through our losses, the healthy boundaries that we have to set for ourselves to put ourselves first, especially when we're in that survival mode, self-preservation and self-love to get us through those intense beginning stages of grief and trauma on our journeys.
Yeah, it's very important to set up boundaries.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes, at least for myself, it felt very almost like isolating and daunting when I had to do it, and almost overwhelming because of everything else I had going on.
That's interesting you say that, because it is, you already feel isolated, and it's like by setting boundaries, you're isolating yourself more, but they're healthy boundaries. They're boundaries, I think, that help you to grow, not necessarily meant to isolate you more, even though they can feel that way.
Right. And I almost needed boundaries too, to help, like when I was trying to process everything and the whirlwind of events that happened, you know, with the traumatic loss and, everything that we experienced. And I was just trying to gain my bearings. I felt like, I really needed to set boundaries because I couldn't really worry about anybody else outside of our immediate family at that point.
Well, I think that's there's several times in your life, I think, when you need to set boundaries and put yourself first.
Yes.
And I think a lot of us tend to put others first.
Yes.
And
Yes.
by setting a healthy boundary is, it's okay to be selfish in that instance, because it's important in the process of healing.
Right. And at the beginning too, I remember, because before, losing Brooke, I was always the one that was such a people pleaser, always wanted to be the positive, outgoing one, and was always there for others. And I made it a point, like I went out of my way to be there for others, like when they were experiencing anything.
Yeah.
But also I was the one that was always reaching out first, sending text messages, thinking
It's
of
exhausting.
you. It is exhausting. Well, then taking hindsight, when we lost Brooke, then I just couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
I couldn't take that time to be that person. Well, and I'm not that person anymore after what we went through.
Yeah. And I was, so I'm naturally the same way.
Yeah.
And it's very, I thrive on it normally.
Yes.
But when
Agreed.
you experience a loss, suddenly that's, you're not thriving on that anymore. It becomes a chore and exhausting. And I'm back into that mode again. I'm at a healthy place, but it took me a long time to get back to that, because frankly, I was just exhausted, mentally, emotionally, physically exhausted. And you're putting so much energy into just getting yourself out of bed and putting one foot in front of the other. You don't have the energy to, give to others like you would normally give.
And taking on their emotions and how they're processing and healing, with everything that we went through, because, they're feeling it in different dynamics and stuff like that. So, but, I find it interesting because it was I am not the same person that I was before Brooke. But I am now finding some of the qualities that I had and characteristics that I am using again, like the check-ins with people. I'm doing that again.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it as frequently.
Yeah.
And I'm allowing myself to have a couple days if it takes me a couple days.
Yeah.
And I'm not the same person I used to be, but you're right. It's still I have some of those qualities back.
Well, trauma changes you.
Yeah.
I think you learn what the importance of taking care of yourself.
Yes.
And setting those boundaries of okay, I'm going to do some check-ins, but I'm the kind of person I'll go out and buy them a gift and drop it off, and I've kind of cut back on that a little bit, just because I realized for my own mental space, I can't be so busy and caring about others that I stop caring about myself.
100% right. And I think that's so important, is that self-care piece and realizing that that's what we need to do, especially when we're in this survival mode.
Yep.
Because
it's more important than ever.
Yeah. Absolutely. And taking that time for ourselves. And then also knowing what we need. I think that was the hardest thing, was learning during the process too. As in, outside of already trying to grieve and process everything, was what do I need as a person? What do I need help with, or what do I need to ask for in those moments?
And I think that's different for everybody, depending on where you find exhaustion.
Yeah.
What exhausts you.
Right.
Right. So those are the basic needs that I think that you wish people would come alongside and help you with.
Yeah.
But I think it's different for everybody. So it's hard. There's not like a one size fits all. Right. Everybody needs someone to clean their house. Like maybe that's therapeutic to you and you want to clean your own house.
Exactly.
Maybe like getting people a meal train. Like, so like cooking, does that exhaust you or does that give you joy?
Exactly.
So I think it's different for everybody, but yeah, just trying to figure that out is really hard.
It is. And you know, living this new life now, right? And it does. I mean, depending on the person, it can change you when we go through these traumatic losses. And for me, it did. So like, I was trying to figure out even what I enjoyed anymore, what, you know, who I was, what I believed in, all of those things.
Well, because you question everything after a loss like that. You're like
losing our babies.
Your world got flipped upside down, and all of a sudden you're just like, what even brings me happiness anymore? What,
right?
You know, because when you've been through something so traumatic, it's hard to even see beyond your circumstance.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. And yeah, so in the beginning, it was so imperative for me to set those boundaries for self-love.
Yeah.
I mean, just starting with the workplace even, because, you know, you get a couple days to grieve unless you're out on medical leave from your procedure and things. But for us, you know, our circumstance was we were like 6 weeks in the NICU when Brooke passed. So I was already through my medical leave at that point. So I got 3 days to grieve and had to return. And so it was like, okay.
Crazy.
It is. And so, you know, I had to learn, especially, you know, with friends, loved ones, to compartmentalize because I felt like everyone was so involved in our loss when it was happening because like, you know, I was reaching out to people, you know, reaching back out to them, letting them know what happened, or they found out what happened. And when I had to return to the workplace, going in front of business clients and things like that, and also, you know, coworkers, for my own self, I had to learn, okay, like, and I almost like went in opposite where I completely shut down and kept myself very tunnel focused and allow myself to talk about anything personal at work because it would bring up those emotions and feelings. And I didn't know how I was going to react because I could just have a meltdown, especially in that early stages, just like, you know, and to come back out of it is so hard.
Yeah. And it can come out of nowhere too.
Right.
And yeah, just trying to compartmentalize everything. And it's such a strange thing because it's like, everyone is there, right? And like and it's almost like, to me, everyone's attention during that time is kind of like holding you up and like, it's like you're not having to walk on solid ground because they're lifting you and like carrying you. And then all of a sudden they like plop you back on the ground.
Yeah.
And it's like, good luck, sister. Like you're on your own.
Yeah.
And to me, that was so hard because it was almost worse.
Yeah.
Because it's like you've got all these people that care, at least you think they do, and a lot of them do truly care, but like how much of it was just to find out what's going on, or, you know,
which ones were genuine, which ones were there to gossip.
It's hard to decipher because, you know, when you're in this moment of really needing people, and they're there, but then all of a sudden you get dropped like a hot potato and it's like, good luck. And suddenly everyone's gone. That's really hard. And it almost makes you feel even more lonely.
Yeah.
Because you're like, where are all these people now?
Right. And then it's, you know, for yourself too. Like for me, returning to work, I almost had to start like, and it's so hard to do. And, you know, like, where's that fine line? Because, like, you don't want to stuff your feelings because, you know, you should be more outward with them, you honest and genuine with them. But just for yourself to make it through a work day, and where I wasn't just, like, trauma dumping on everybody, I was, like, stuffing it. But I was not okay on the inside. But on the outside, I looked like I was okay. Yep. So, like, it was just, like, trucking along and things like that. But realistically, inside, I was like, I'm not being my true self.
Yeah. And it is a fine line because you want people to talk about your baby
of
and
course,
what happened, but at the same time, it's like only a time and a place.
Circle.
Yeah. Like it's almost, right. You want to do it with the people that you trust the most because it is hard to just randomly start talking about it with somebody who is just a passing by, like, hey, how you doing?
Yes.
And then, But you don't want to say I'm fine because you're not fine, but you don't want to get into it. It can be hard.
So it is. It's a whole and that's why I think, we do need more time here in our society, America, that we get more time to take that so we can process everything. So we're not doing all of those things, and then we're not facing this.
And we're not forced into situations that we're not ready for.
Absolutely. And, they say, I think it's $70 billion a year or something is lost in the workplace with grief. And I could see why.
Yeah.
Because people are returning to work too soon.
Yeah.
And I mean, really, what are they doing? How are they actually processing? I mean, you're not.
Employees.
You're not. 100% not. So, yeah, I mean, it's just that. But, you do want to think people have the best intentions, like you're saying, right? But it's who is there to actually not be in the know?
Yeah.
They just really want to know and they care about you and be there to listen to you. And then, and then after living, after we lost our babies, and then just trying to figure out those people and to process that on top of everything else we're processing.
Oh, you're already deciphering so much and then trying to decipher that on top of it.
Yeah, and I felt like my BS reader and my I couldn't cut through all of that during that time
because you're not thinking clearly.
Yeah,
it's too much.
Absolutely. Something else I had to try to be okay with and learning to be okay with was when people were texting to reach out, and I was taking a couple days to reply to them because I just wasn't there, and I had to get myself mentally and emotionally prepared to have those conversations and then returning phone calls and things like that outside of the workplace, right? So these personalized conversations that I was going to have, it was so hard getting there to that point of,
building yourself up and preparing for that. Yeah. And I'm if you don't hear from me in 2 hours, something's terribly wrong with me kind of person. Typically with my texting and reaching out to people, now unless I have a busy day, but typically I get back to people right away, and giving myself grace, I think, to allow a couple of days to pass if I need to, because you're not always going to be in that mindset of I'm prepared to respond to you,
right?
And being okay with that. It can be hard because especially if you have a tendency to be on top of stuff like that.
Absolutely. And then, you want to return the phone calls, the texts, because you feel obligated to, because they're taking that time.
Yeah.
And then you're well, I don't want them to stop reaching out to me because it does mean so much.
That fine line.
Yeah. Yep. And then it's at that 2 and 3 month mark, I felt like after Brooke, so many were starting to slow down. And that's when I almost felt like I needed people the most.
Yeah. And that's so I don't know if I've ever shared this before, but I had somebody who sent me a card.
Yes.
2 or 3 months after the loss. And it was somebody who had experienced a loss. And to me, that meant the world, because it was at that point, the 2 to 3 months after that, everyone kind of leaves.
Yeah.
I mean, they might check in occasionally, but that full on attention is gone.
Yeah.
And they go back to their lives, and you're feeling more isolated than ever. And I got a card in the mail just uplifting me and just saying I understand what you're feeling right now. The world's going back to normal, and your world's still standing still. And that meant the world. I'll never forget that, because it's so true. That's the time frame. You're really the most vulnerable.
Really.
And I'll never forget that. And I try to do the same thing for people.
Absolutely. And I think, we try to do that with our mentorships and also with just check-ins with our survivors and stuff, because it really is those months, those years after. It's still checking in with people who have lost babies even 10, 15, 20 years, ago.
Yeah.
Just having other survivors to be in your corner and in your community. Because I'm telling you, every time I have a conversation with another baby loss survivor, it's we have this instant connection and we can just all of a sudden just pick up where we are.
Yep. You can just recognize, I think, because you recognize the depths of what they're feeling.
Right.
And it's not something you can really explain to somebody who hasn't gone through it.
Right.
So I think there's that instant connection just because you understand, you get where they're at right now, and there's no judgment.
Yes.
And that's the biggest gift you can give somebody who's going through a loss.
Absolutely. Agreed. Yeah. And it's, and something else. So interestingly enough, right? Going from having conversations and texting and being okay with yourself with those things. I also had to set boundaries with making plans. So with people who I made plans with, letting them know, okay, I would like to make these plans with the attention or the the intention that I am going to come to it, but I don't know how I'm going to be feeling that day, especially in that first like year or two. Like, so like, I would like to, in this moment, I want to come out, I want to do this, go out to eat with you, whatever the case is. But just wanted to be upfront with you of something where it's because of this reason.
And I think being upfront is the key there.
Yes.
Because if they're a true friend or family, they're going to totally understand. Like saying my intention is to be there. However, just a heads up, like if I'm having a bad day, I may need to cancel. I'm so sorry ahead of time. Like I hope you understand. And they will.
Yeah. And 100%. And you know, what's interesting is too, when we started, you know, after our lost journey after Brooke, I really did lose some people in my life.
Yeah.
And it was through me not being the one to reach out to them first. It was me, you know, them not knowing how to handle me on my worst days.
Yeah.
Also, me having to cancel last minute, even though I was upfront about it and tried to voice it as much as possible, but it is what it is.
Well, and I think when people get so used to you being a certain way, like you're Bernice, you're always so positive and happy and like, and then suddenly and they like that about you.
Right.
So, but then suddenly you're not that way. And they're like, oh, like, I don't want to, that's not what I signed up for. Like, that's not the Bernice I know. And like, that can put people off.
Yeah.
But it's those people who love you at your worst.
Agreed.
And you know, when you're, whether you're happy Bernice or sad Bernice, like they love you. And those are the people that you should keep in your corner.
Absolutely. Invest the time in, right? And to keep investing in and having, you know, in your life.
And it's hard to let go of those other relationships.
Oh, it is. Especially during this time.
Especially when you think too, that it was genuine.
Right.
Like it's almost like
another
breakup.
loss.
Yeah, it's another loss because you're like, oh gosh, I mean,
it's like
I
the
really
subsequent losses that you don't talk, like a lot of people don't talk about, but this is one of them. Then you're grieving the loss of a friendship that you thought was, you know, authentic, and
you're grieving all over again.
Yeah. And it just like adds on, and then it adds on to that pain. But then like, and two, I would obsess about things then. I would like replay the tape of, was it my fault, or did I do something? Yes. Or how could I have handled this differently? And because like right now I'm already filled with so much of that like shame, blame, and guilt that's fueling my trauma, you know, from losing Brooke. And as you know, the mom, and you know, just you feel all these things, you question everything. You're then also questioning yourself, was it me? And it's interesting, but I mean, seeing it on the outside, then it was like, you know what, this did, like I can at least see that this was meant to happen the way it was.
For sure.
And you know, also too, if I would always say this too, if someone and we made plans, right, and they needed to change the plans, I was working up to it for days, like emotionally, mentally,
to prepare for the event or whatever.
To prepare for whatever we were going to do. If it was a couple hours outing out, like getting our pedicures, manicures,
it takes mental preparation. You wouldn't think, but when you're going through
exhausting
grief like that, it is exhausting, and it takes a lot of mental preparation to just go out to dinner or
oh my goodness, I know, right? And just getting yourself there.
So if somebody cancels on you,
or says to you, you know, oh, can we push it back or whatever, I'm like, whoa, like I was prepared for like from 5 to 7 or you know, whatever that time frame was.
They don't realize the prep work that went into preparing for that conference or that dinner or that outing.
So like, you know, I might have been flexible before, obviously, if we had to change things a half an hour or hour, but then it's like, it's okay. Like I had to be okay with just canceling or rescheduling then. Can we move it to another day? Even though I did all that prep work leading up to it and like was really like, you know, and I was genuinely looking forward to seeing that person. It's not that. It's just, though I had, you know, I need to be okay with myself and give myself that grace if I need to do those things.
Well, and I think too, that you just saying that about the disappointment. So it's not even just like, it's the preparation, but then it's the disappointment of maybe it was something that you were actually genuinely for once was looking forward to doing something. Right. And then the disappointment of it is hard.
Now all of a sudden it changed or it's getting moved or whatever the case is. And it's like, oh my goodness.
Well, and I don't know about you, but for me, I'd be like, oh my gosh, is it me? Like, do they not want to hang out with? Like,
I
that always
dark,
go there.
I know, because I do too. And it's like, is it the dark cloud that I always feel like I'm bringing into a room or I'm bringing around people?
They just don't want to be with me.
Yes. And is it something I did? I know. All of a sudden it goes right there.
Always.
I know. And then I also think like, are they only getting together with me because I did lose my baby?
Yes.
You know, and that they want to spend time.
What are their intentions?
Are you going to enjoy my company? Because I'm really feeling like I'm not in enjoyment right now.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, what are you trying to do? Like, like what's your hidden
question
agenda?
Everything.
Yes. And then I had to realize like the people that I did have in my life after we lost Brooke, like the ones that were really close still and close knit and sat with me during my worst days are the ones that I know I'm like, no, I can trust them. I need to remember that.
Their intentions are good. Yes. It's truly something going on. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And then like you can see it and But I think our BS meter, really does go off when we're dealing with this kind of thing, because we get to see the beautiful and the ugliness, right, in relationships. And something that I feel like I was given was to see, okay, who do I want to give my time to? And that actually means something now, because we know how short and how precious life is, that who do I want to share that time with? Because I want to make memories with, and those memories, because we know now we don't get those memories with our babies, but we get to make memories with other people. And when we're giving that to someone, like that is truly a precious gift that we're giving this our time now. Yeah. And it's like that they actually want to spend that time with us, and we want to do the same, right? It's like intentional now.
It is intentional. And I think that's part of the whole healthy boundaries is like, who do you intentionally want to give your time to? Because you do now realize that time is precious and it's not, freely running given. Yourself ragged and for people and things that are not worthy of your time. Yeah. You learn that lesson. Absolutely. During tragic events like this.
Yeah. And I think it took going through this for me to see some of that. And today I am grateful for having those, authentic relationships that I do, and those people that I want to give my time to and have that time with.
Yeah. Learning and growing within yourself and within your relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. And knowing too, like our circle, right? Like in our community, like I want to be with people who get me, like on all levels too. So there's that. But I also had to set boundaries with social media. I had to stay off of socials for a while. And I know we've talked about this in other podcasts, and we talked about it around the holidays, especially doing that as well. But I really could not see like the baby pictures and like pregnancy photos and things of people that were going on around. And I wanted to be happy for them. And I didn't wish ill on them. And it's not that I didn't want to be. And especially some of my close ones that were, going through pregnancy and having babies. But I was jealous and envious of what 100%. They were going through.
I think
and just to self-protect.
That was for sure the number one reason why I stayed off socials during that time, because it was jealousy.
Yes.
100% jealousy. Yeah. And just, it ate at me.
Yes.
And I recognized that it was very unhealthy for me to put myself, it's like, there's a fire over there. Let me go willingly walk into the fire. Like, why would you do that to yourself?
Yes.
And I think, sometimes it feels good. I think we have this weird tendency to like, want to walk into that fire and like self-pity and like get into that
wallow
zone.
in it just for a little bit.
And that's okay. But I think recognizing that it's healthier to put up that wall and boundary around that fire temporarily until you get to a healthier space.
And I felt so disconnected from like when I finally did not get on social medias, I felt so disconnected from the world, as in like I didn't really know what was happening. I found out like news things that happen on socials. Like I found out, things like with people in our lives, and I was like, you know what? Whatever I'm supposed to be meant to know about, or I realized too then how fake social media can be as well. It's not, because my loved ones are going to tell me if something happens in our family. Yeah. Friends are going to tell me.
And I think that goes to like, well, what do we do before social media?
Right.
Like we found out, and I think this is where before social media, we didn't overload ourselves with other people's burdens.
Right.
Like our burdens of others came from those closest to us, because if there was a burden, they called you or they texted you or whatever, or emailed you. But like now you go on social and it's like, you see all these things that just weigh you down, whether they're good things or bad things, they can weigh you down. And it's not intentional, but it's like, it's senseless burdens that when you're going through a loss, that you just don't need that added weight.
Pressure. Yes.
And so like staying off social, suddenly you don't have that added weight.
Yes.
And it's lifted off of you. And like, the burden just seems lighter.
It does. And I think at first, like I was looking at it, like I said, like the disconnection, because you don't feel connected then to what you're normally connected to in life.
You're going back to a true connection, how it used to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also, that goes back to also like commercials and TV.
Oh yeah.
We were, just before we got on the podcast, we were talking about this. I was watching, I think it was on Hulu or Prime Video, but something with ads. And I normally don't because we, usually stream and have, subscriptions to things. But all of a sudden it was showing about the whooping cough vaccine. And it was a woman giving birth to her baby and then being put on her chest. And I was like, oh my goodness. Like if I was watching the, right after losing Brooke, like that would be a huge trigger for me. And like they're not thinking about this, and that's the clientele that they're doing. They're not thinking about the 1 in 4 watching this right now. And also like a TV show, I was watching Virgin River on Netflix the other week, and all of a sudden, she's going through a miscarriage, and it's that bleeding and like, things that us survivors have to deal with and have seen and experienced, going into the bathroom, and then all of a sudden going into,
and there's no preparing you for that, because if you're watching a show,
where is the trigger warning?
Well, and that's almost like before the show, there should be some kind of trigger warning for anything and for any situation.
Exactly.
Like if
they
there's
do
like
it for violence.
Yeah, exactly.
They have the ratings for violence, sexual nudity.
Yep.
But what about like the emotional or the traumatic things that happen? Like why aren't they like warning, or like death is going to be on here?
Yes.
Great. Please warn us.
Yes.
Like, and I'm not saying that they need to go through every warning, but just knowing that, okay, there's going to be a baby loss on
this
here.
Could be a sensitive topic for somebody.
Yes. Yeah. They do it for suicides now, which I think is great. They should do that.
I agree.
And so it's just like anything else. Like there should be that. So
it's hard to avoid it though. It's like if you don't know it's coming.
Yeah. But I stayed so disconnected from everything. Like I got the news through my husband. Like he would come home from work. Cause we've talked about this. My spouse was the one that like he could continue to like he needed to move on. Like he needed to keep going into work. He needed to work overtime. He needed to do house projects. He needed to stay busy. I needed to sit and process everything. So like he would come home and he would give me what was going on in the world because I couldn't watch because you never knew what was going to come up.
Well, and he could probably filter that for you.
He could. Thank
so
goodness.
Like it was just stuff that he knows you can handle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because like you said, that heaviness of knowing everything that was happening during that time.
Even
in the
if
world,
it's unrelated to what you're going through, like it's just added weight.
Like a world disaster, you know, like that would have been so heavy on me at that time. And I would have felt like, how can I take on any more stuff? I would have been drowning again.
For sure.
Yeah. So a couple things that I did to protect myself. And as I was setting up these boundaries, one was making sure that I was keeping everything in check, right? So like I was like talking to my husband about getting a second opinion that I trusted from my trauma therapist, from, another survivor. Like, am I in the wrong here? Like, and making sure that I was saying both sides very clearly and openly and honestly, so I could get really good feedback because I would obsess about things. And I was like, why do I keep doing this to myself? So I think having others to hear their perspectives and to gain their opinions was so important.
Well, because your perspective's so warped in that moment. Like you're, so having somebody speak into you is
and you don't know if you can
important.
trust your opinion at that point because of everything you just went through, your trauma.
Sure.
Like you're just trying to learn
you're
what
not
you
thinking
can.
clearly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also having that exit planning and safe spaces. So like I definitely, this was like going into that preparation of preparing to go out or, going to dinner or going out in public. It was like, okay, if I'm feeling this certain way, where can I go? Okay, I'm going to drive separate, or I'm going to do this, or like have my husband with me, or have, someone with me. And it was like just going through, and it's exhausting thinking about it again.
Yeah.
But I really did need that in that time.
Yeah.
Because I needed to be able to, okay, if this happens,
route.
I don't need to feel guilty or bad about it.
Nope. And I think that's a fantastic idea because I think it's super important, and it's important that you feel safe.
Yes.
No matter where you are, you have safe people with you.
Yes.
And if you have a moment or there's something that happens that you're like, you just know you can't handle it, you have to be able to get out of there.
Yeah, like for a whole day trip, for example, that would have been off the table at that point because it was just too much in one day. But a couple hours I could try really hard to muster up. And I wanted to do, obviously, too.
Right.
Yeah, but it's that additional planning that you never thought about. And then it's also being comfortable with expressing, my own grief and your grief, right? Like with others, like beforehand, like when we make plans, just in case I cancel them, just wanted to make sure you knew. And ones that love you and accept you and are there with you, fully engaged in what you're going through, they will know.
They'll be fine with it.
100%.
Yeah.
So I think it is, that's really when you separate like losing those fake relationships and gaining or, even expanding upon those really meaningful ones.
Well, and I think that's important too. Like you may lose some relationships, but I think the ones that are the people that are truly there for you will be enhanced. Those relationships will be enhanced. So like, it's like you're losing, but
honestly,
you probably would have lost them eventually anyways if they weren't true relationships. But like the ones that are most meaningful become even more meaningful.
It was really interesting because I said to my husband, like, before losing Brooke, and we've talked about this numerous times, I had a huge quantity of friends.
Yeah.
I probably had like 30 or 40 that were like, I felt like were our genuine friends. Now I have a handful, maybe 6 or 7 that are my genuine connected friends. And that's who it is outside of, my sisters and, but I consider my sisters part of our friend group,
Yeah.
But it is like they're it.
It's not necessarily about the quantity, it's the quality.
It's the quality now. And that's really what it comes down to.
And I think that's just part of lessons learned. And, things as you go through grief and trauma, you realize things. And I think that's
quality,
one of it.
Quality of your time. It's the quality of the relationships. It's the quality of, how you're using your life and what you're doing with it. And it's finding all of those different things, the qualities that are going to add to your life and not take away because you know now.
The importance of life and how short it is. And you want to fill it with quality things.
Yeah. Embrace it with all quality.
I agree.
Yeah. So... Well, thank you so much for everyone who tuned in today. Please follow or subscribe to our podcast to help us reach more of us survivors so we can unite all together because we are always with you, fertility loss, pregnancy loss, and baby loss survivors. Until next time.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you.